At 37,000 feet, the captain collapsed and stopped breathing. The only pilot who could save 199 lives was sitting in row 8, off-duty, in faded jeans, eyes closed, looking like nobody. She stood up. Walked to the cockpit. They called her Viper. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a Tuesday afternoon. September 10, 2024. The clock on the departure board read 2:37 p.m. Eastern Time. Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was doing what it always does on a Tuesday afternoon, running at full chaos. Thousands of people moved through the massive terminals like water through a broken dam. Business travelers in wrinkled suits pulled rolling suitcases through crowds that never seemed to thin out. Families with too much luggage argued near check-in counters, pointing at bags that were clearly too heavy, clearly too big, clearly somebody's problem. College students with giant backpacks bumped into everyone without apologizing because they were too absorbed in their phones to notice they had bumped into anyone. Flight crews walked fast with their rolling suitcases clicking on the polished floors, eyes forward, expressions blank, doing the walk of people who have made this same walk through this same airport 1,000 times and feel nothing about it anymore. Announcements echoed from speakers in every direction, overlapping each other, names and gate numbers and final boarding calls all blurring together into one long river of airport noise. Coffee shops had lines stretching out the door. Gift shops were full of people buying things they did not need because they were nervous about flying. Babies cried. Old men sat near windows watching planes. Teenagers filmed themselves. Everyone was somewhere between tired and annoyed. Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson is the busiest airport in the world. On a Tuesday afternoon in September, you could not tell if it was more crowded than usual or less, because it is always this crowded. It never stops. The planes never stop coming. The people never stop moving. It is a machine that runs 24 hours a day, and the fuel that keeps it running is human impatience. Gate E12. Delta Airlines Flight 1549, non-stop service to Seattle, Washington. Boeing 757-200, configured for 199 passengers. The aircraft had arrived 15 minutes late from its previous destination, which meant the turnaround was rushed, which meant the boarding started late, which meant the passengers at Gate E12 were already frustrated before they even got on the plane. The gate agent was doing her absolute best, smiling and repeating the same answers to the same questions. Yes, we are still boarding. No, I do not have an exact new departure time. Yes, overhead bin space is limited, please check larger bags. Yes, I understand you are frustrated. No, there is nothing I can do about the delay. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. The passengers filed onto the aircraft slowly, the way tired people do when they have been waiting too long and their feet hurt and all they want is to sit down and be transported somewhere else without having to think about it. They squeezed past each other in the narrow jet bridge. They struggled with overhead bins, cramming bags in at angles that defied geometry, pulling them out and reinserting them and blocking the aisle while the people behind them waited with thin patience. They checked their phones one last time before the flight. They argued quietly with their children. They stared at seat numbers on their boarding passes and then stared at the numbers on the seats and looked confused even though the system is very simple. They were annoyed and exhausted and ready to be done with airports for the day and ready to be anywhere that was not this gate and this crowd and this delay. Among them was a woman who nobody noticed. She was in seat 8C. Aisle seat. Economy class. She appeared to be in her late 30s, maybe 5 feet 7 inches tall, with an athletic build that was visible even under her casual travel clothes, the kind of build that comes from years of physical training, not from a gym phase, but from a lifestyle. She had shoulder-length dark hair pulled back in a simple low ponytail, no loose strands, no styling, just pulled back and secured because hair in your face is a nuisance and she had no patience for nuisances. Her skin was olive-toned, suggesting Mediterranean or Middle Eastern heritage. She had the kind of face that is hard to describe afterward, not unattractive, but somehow difficult to pin down, features that your eyes move past without snagging on anything specific. She wore faded jeans that had been washed so many times they had gone soft. A plain black V-neck t-shirt. A worn brown leather jacket that looked like it had been through years of use, not fashionably worn, not distressed on purpose, but actually aged, actually lived in, actually carried on real shoulders through real weather in real places. She carried a small backpack over one shoulder and rolled a compact carry-on behind her. She did not stand out. She did not try to. She moved through the boarding process with the quiet, practiced efficiency of someone who has boarded aircraft so many times that the whole procedure is automatic. There is a specific kind of calm that frequent travelers have, not the nervous energy of someone who flies twice a year, not the deliberate relaxation of someone trying not to be nervous, but a genuine, deep, structural absence of anxiety about the process, as though boarding an aircraft is no more stressful than walking through a doorway. She had that calm. She stowed her bag in the overhead bin without fuss, tucking it in with one smooth motion that took exactly as much space as it needed and no more. She sat down in 8C and buckled her seatbelt before the person in 8B had even located their seat. She closed her eyes before the safety demonstration began. Completely unremarkable. Forgettable. The kind of person cameras slide past without registering anything worth keeping. The kind of face that gets described as a woman, dark hair, medium height, and then the description stops because there is nothing else that stuck. Except for one detail. If you were sitting directly next to her, and her jacket sleeve happened to ride up slightly when she reached to adjust her headrest, you would see a tattoo on her left forearm. Small. Clean lines. Not decorative. A viper snake, tightly coiled, wrapped around the number 77, the digits rendered in military stencil font, the kind of blocky lettering you see stenciled onto equipment and crates in armed forces facilities. The tattoo was not new. The ink had settled into her skin the way old tattoos do, part of her now, not decoration but record. You are in seat 8D. The middle seat. You did not choose the middle seat, you were assigned it when you booked late and it was the only thing left. You are already annoyed about the delay and the cramped quarters and the fact that the person in 8E has already claimed both armrests. You see the woman in 8C exactly once, when she has to lean slightly into the aisle to let you squeeze past to your seat. Your brain registers, woman, late 30s, tired, wants to be left alone, do not bother her. Then you sit down, pull out your tablet, and forget her completely. You have absolutely no idea that the unremarkable woman in seat 8C is about to become the most important person on this aircraft. Her name is Captain Alexis Reyes. United States Air Force. Call sign, Viper. She is 38 years old. She has served in the United States Air Force for 16 years. Her aircraft of choice, her weapon, her tool, her second body for the past decade, is the F-16 Fighting Falcon. A single-seat, single-engine, supersonic fighter jet that flies at speeds exceeding Mach 2 and was designed to do one thing better than almost anything else in the sky, fight and win. She has 3,200 total flight hours. 3,200 hours in the air, most of them in jets that push the limits of what the human body and the laws of physics will allow. She has flown 77 combat missions. 77 times, she has taken off from a base, crossed into enemy territory or a combat zone, done what was required, and come back. The number 77 on her tattoo is not decorative. It is a count. Every mission, one mark. She stopped after 77 because that is when she stopped flying combat. Her call sign, Viper, was not given to her because of her personality. She is actually quiet and reserved in ordinary life. She speaks when she has something to say. She does not fill silence with noise. She is the kind of person who listens more than she talks, who observes more than she participates, who sits in the back of a room and knows everything that is happening in it without drawing any attention to herself. In social situations she can go entire evenings without saying more than a dozen words and leave without anyone noticing she was gone. She is not shy, she simply does not see the value of talking for the sake of talking. The name Viper came from her flying style. In the air, she is something completely different from the quiet woman on the ground. In the air she is aggressive and precise and utterly fearless in the way that only people who have made peace with the possibility of dying can be fearless. She moves her aircraft with a kind of controlled violence, committing to maneuvers fully and immediately, never hesitating, never second-guessing, never leaving any doubt about what she intends to do. Other pilots gave her the name after watching her fly. They said she moved through the sky the way a viper moves, fast, precise, and you do not see her until it is already too late. The name stuck. It became more real, in many ways, than her given name. She holds a record that will never be publicly announced. Most successful close air support missions by a female fighter pilot in United States Air Force history. The record is classified. It will never appear in any newspaper or magazine. No ceremony will be held. No award will be given for this specific achievement because acknowledging it publicly would reveal operational details that remain sensitive. But inside certain circles, inside the rooms where the people who know these things gather and speak quietly, the name Viper is spoken with a particular kind of respect. The kind that is not performed. The kind that is real. She is one of only 7 women in the history of the United States Air Force to be selected for the Fighter Weapons School. The Fighter Weapons School is the Air Force equivalent of the Navy's Top Gun program. It takes the best combat pilots in the Air Force, pilots who are already exceptional, already decorated, already proven in the air, and spends weeks pushing them further, teaching them to fight at the absolute limit of what their aircraft and their skills can do, then sending them back to their units to pass that knowledge on. Getting selected for Fighter Weapons School is one of the highest honors in military aviation. The majority of Air Force fighter pilots, even excellent ones, are never selected. She was selected. She completed it. She graduated near the top of her class. She has been shot at 23 times. Not at her aircraft in a general sense, specifically, deliberately, targeted by enemy weapons trying to kill her. 23 times, something was aimed at her and fired. 2 of her aircraft have been damaged by ground fire. She brought both of them home. Once, over a combat zone in Syria, her hydraulic systems failed so catastrophically that she had almost no flight controls remaining. The hydraulics are what allow a pilot to move the control surfaces, the things that actually steer the aircraft. Without them, the F-16 becomes a very fast, very expensive piece of metal with no way to change direction. She flew the aircraft home anyway. She used differential engine thrust, pushing the throttle up and pulling it back in precise increments, to make tiny corrections to her flight path and guide the aircraft back across the border and down onto the runway. The maintenance crew that examined the aircraft afterward said they did not understand how she had done it. The physics, they said, should not have worked. She told them the physics worked fine. You just had to understand what you were working with. She received the Distinguished Flying Cross for actions in combat. She received the Air Medal with 5 oak leaf clusters, meaning she received the Air Medal and then received it 4 more times for additional acts of distinguished flying. She received a classified commendation for an operation that does not officially exist, for results that are not officially acknowledged, for work that she is not allowed to discuss publicly and never will be. And yet, sitting in Seat 8C on Delta Flight 1549 to Seattle, she is not Captain Viper of the United States Air Force. She is on terminal leave. Terminal leave is the military's process for transitioning a service member out of active duty, a period at the end of their service where they are technically still in the military but no longer reporting for duty, using up their accumulated leave time before the paperwork finalizes and they become civilians. In 2 weeks, the papers will be signed and processed. The rank will become a former rank. The uniform will go into storage or a box or a closet. The military ID will be replaced by a civilian one. The career will be officially, permanently, irrevocably over. She requested this herself. This is important to understand. She was not forced out. She was not passed over for promotion. She was not pushed aside or marginalized or told that her time was up. She chose to leave. She submitted the paperwork for terminal leave voluntarily, after a long period of sitting alone with a decision that she could not discuss with almost anyone because the things that brought her to that decision are things she is not allowed to talk about and would not talk about even if she were. She left because 16 years of combat flying had taken something from her that she cannot name precisely but can feel in specific, concrete ways every single day. She wakes up at 3 a.m. Not sometimes. Regularly. She wakes up in the dark with her heart already going fast, with sweat on her skin, with the tail end of a dream dissolving before she can catch it but leaving behind a feeling like she has just made a terrible mistake and she does not know yet how bad it is. She cannot get back to sleep after these nights. She lies in the dark and runs through procedures in her head, emergency checklists, escape maneuvers, threat assessments, because her brain will not stop doing the work even when there is no work to do. She walks into every room and immediately calculates the exits. She profiles every person who approaches her. She sits with her back to walls in restaurants. She cannot turn this off. She has tried. The training went too deep. 3 months before this flight, something happened on a mission that she cannot stop replaying in her mind. Her targeting systems malfunctioned. The systems that identify targets, that confirm what is in the sights before weapons are released, gave her bad information. She was seconds from firing on what she believed to be an enemy position. The position was not enemy. The position was Allied troops, people on her side, people who were depending on the aircraft overhead to protect them, not to kill them. She caught the error. She saw something in the last moment that did not match, something small, something that her eye caught and her brain processed in a fraction of a second, and she pulled back before firing. 2 seconds. She caught the error 2 seconds before it would have been too late and irreversible and catastrophic. She has not slept well since. She questions her own judgment now. This is the thing that broke something in her, not the danger, not the exhaustion, not even the nightmares. She can survive all of those things. She has survived all of those things for 16 years. What she cannot survive is not trusting herself. A pilot who does not trust her own judgment in the aircraft is not safe. A combat pilot who questions her targeting, who hesitates, who second guesses, that pilot is a danger, to herself and to the people depending on her. She knew it was time to go. She submitted the paperwork. She packed her things. She got on a commercial flight to Seattle. Today, she is flying to Seattle to visit her sister Clara for the first time in 3 years. 3 years is a long time. It is too long. She knows that. But her life for the past several years has been the Air Force and the Air Force only, and the Air Force does not leave much room for things like family visits and normal human connection and sitting on someone's back porch drinking coffee in the morning with nowhere to be. She is going to try to be a normal person. She is going to try to sleep through the night without medication. She is going to try to stop calculating threat vectors when she enters a room. She is going to try to figure out who Alexis Reyes is, who she actually is, when she is not Captain Viper, not the best close air support pilot in the Air Force, not a decorated combat veteran, not a weapon in service of a mission. She does not know who that person is yet. She is going to Seattle to find out. She closes her eyes. She breathes slowly and deliberately, the way her therapist taught her. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. She tries to exist quietly for a few hours. That plan lasts exactly 47 minutes. 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Delta Flight 1549 lifts off from Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport and climbs into a clear September sky. The aircraft banks gently and settles onto its heading northwest toward Seattle. The engines hum at cruise power, a sound so steady and constant that passengers stop hearing it within minutes. The seatbelt sign chimes off. Flight attendants move through the aisle checking that bags are properly stowed and tray tables are up and passengers are settled. Viper keeps her eyes closed. She is not sleeping. She is doing the breathing exercise. She is trying very hard not to think about anything that has a cockpit or a weapons system or a set of coordinates attached to it. In the cockpit, two pilots are doing their jobs. Captain Michael Torres is 56 years old. He has been a commercial airline pilot for 32 years, all of them with Delta. He has 23,000 total flight hours, a number so large it is difficult to actually comprehend. If you spent every hour of every day for 2.5 years doing nothing but sitting in an aircraft cockpit, you would have 23,000 hours. He has flown in thunderstorms that made experienced travelers grab armrests. He has managed engine failures. He has diverted for medical emergencies in the cabin. He has handled bird strikes, unexpected icing, sudden mechanical warnings, communications failures, and every other kind of surprise that commercial aviation occasionally produces. He is not a man who is rattled by his job. He has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. He is planning to retire at the end of next year and has already talked to his wife about where they want to travel. He passed his most recent FAA medical examination 2 months ago with no issues noted. He is, by every available measure, a healthy, experienced, professional pilot in the middle of what is for him a completely routine flight. Beside him is First Officer Jennifer Park. She is 38 years old, the same age as Viper, though she does not know this and will not know it until later. She has been with Delta Airlines for 11 years. She has 7,800 flight hours. She is a good pilot, not in the way that people use the word good when they mean adequate, but genuinely good, careful and competent and professional in the way that the best pilots are professional, not flashy, not reckless, not a hero, just someone who does the job correctly and consistently and takes seriously the responsibility of sitting in a cockpit with other people's lives in her hands. She has handled emergencies before. Nothing that tested her as severely as what is coming, but she is not without experience. At 3:42 p.m. Eastern Time, 47 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft is at cruise altitude, 37,000 feet, over the Appalachian Mountains. Everything is normal. The autopilot is managing the flight. The engines are running perfectly. The sky outside is clear and blue and smooth. Captain Torres reaches for his coffee cup. It is such an ordinary moment. His hand moves toward the cup, the same motion he has made thousands of times in thousands of cockpits over 32 years, and his fingers close around it, and then something happens inside his head that no physical examination 2 months ago could have predicted or detected, because the thing that is happening has been building silently for years in a place that routine medical screening does not reach. A cerebral aneurysm. A weakness in the wall of a blood vessel in his brain, a weakness that developed gradually over time, that grew slowly and silently and never caused a symptom, never sent a warning, never gave anyone, including Torres himself, any reason to suspect it was there. Until now, when the wall of the vessel can no longer hold and it ruptures and the result is immediate and catastrophic and completely without warning. I don't feel. Those are the last words Captain Michael Torres speaks on this flight. For words, a sentence that does not finish. His hand releases the coffee cup. His body goes slack in the harness. His head drops forward. He is unconscious before his sentence ends, before the cup settles, before Jennifer Park has fully registered that something has changed. Mike? Park says. She is looking at the instruments. She turns to look at him. Mike. He does not respond. He does not move. His breathing is wrong, she can hear it, shallow and irregular, not the steady breathing of sleep but the labored, uncertain breathing of a body in serious medical distress. Jennifer Park is a professional pilot with 11 years of experience and 7,800 flight hours. She has trained for pilot incapacitation in simulators. She knows the checklist. She knows the procedures. She knows exactly what she is supposed to do. For one terrible, stretching second, she cannot make herself move. Because there is a difference, a profound, enormous, physical difference, between training for something in a simulator and watching it happen in real life. In the simulator, the instructor is sitting behind you. The walls of the sim are fake. The stakes are practice stakes. In the simulator, you know, at the deepest level of your consciousness, that no matter what happens, you are going to walk out of this room in an hour and have lunch. In the real cockpit, at 37,000 feet, with your captain unconscious beside you and 199 people behind you and the aircraft continuing forward at 550 miles per hour because it does not know or care that anything has changed, there is no such knowledge. The stakes are completely, absolutely real. And for 1 second, Jennifer Park's body does not cooperate with her training. Then it does. She takes the controls. She scans the instruments, altitude stable, heading good, engines nominal, fuel normal, autopilot engaged. She checks Torres, breathing but unconscious, no response to her voice. She cannot help him. She can only fly. She presses the radio button. Atlanta Center, Delta 1549, I have an emergency. Captain is incapacitated. I repeat, Captain is unconscious. Declaring emergency. Requesting immediate clearance to nearest suitable airport. Air traffic control responds within 3 seconds. The controller's voice is calm and practiced, the calm of someone who has trained for exactly this kind of call. Delta 1549, Atlanta Center, copy your emergency. Turn left heading 030, vectors to Charlotte Douglas International Airport, approximately 180 miles. Descend at pilot's discretion, maintain VFR on top if able. Emergency services will be standing by at Charlotte. Say souls on board and fuel remaining. 199 souls on board. Fuel approximately 4 hours. Delta 1549 turning left heading 030. Thank you, Atlanta. She begins the turn. She is doing everything right. Her hands are steady. Her voice is steady. On the outside, she is performing exactly as a professional pilot should perform in this situation. On the inside, she is terrified. She is alone in this cockpit with a man who might be dying beside her and 199 people who are trusting her completely, and she has never done this for real before, and the weight of it is pressing down on her chest like something physical. In the main cabin, the passengers notice the turn but not much else. A few look up from their screens. A few glance at each other. One woman near the back says to her husband that she thinks they changed direction. The husband says they probably just had to go around some weather. They go back to their movie. The senior flight attendant on this flight is Maria Santos. She has been a Delta flight attendant for 19 years. She has seen many things. She has administered CPR to a passenger in cardiac arrest at 30,000 feet. She has managed a cabin full of panicking passengers during severe turbulence. She has handled a man who tried to open the emergency exit at altitude because he was having a psychiatric episode. She has done all of these things and remained calm and professional throughout, because 19 years of doing this job teaches you that the most important thing you can do in a crisis is not add to it. She picks up the interphone handset and calls the cockpit. Park answers. Park tells her, in clipped, professional language, that the captain is unconscious and an emergency has been declared. She asks Maria to make a PA announcement requesting any pilots aboard to identify themselves. Maria hangs up. She takes one breath. She picks up the PA handset. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency in the cockpit. If there are any pilots aboard this aircraft, commercial, military, private, any flying experience at all, please identify yourself to the flight crew immediately. Thank you. The cabin reacts. Some people gasp. Some people grab armrests. A woman in the fourth row starts praying quietly, her lips moving, her hands clasped in her lap. A man in first class says loudly that he knew something was wrong, he felt the aircraft turn, he told his colleague something felt wrong. A child near the back starts crying because the adults around her are scared and children can sense that. 3 or 4 passengers pull out their phones and try to call people, though they are over the mountains and the signal is poor. In seat 8C, Alexis Reyes opens her eyes. She processes what she just heard. Her brain, which has spent 16 years being trained to assess situations rapidly and completely, does it automatically, in less than a second. Medical emergency in the cockpit. Captain incapacitated. Request for pilots. Then 3 seconds of something that is not quite hesitation. More like grief. I am not that person anymore. I am on terminal leave. 2 weeks from now I am a civilian. I am done being the one who steps up. I am done being the one who solves the emergency. I need to stop being that person. I came on this flight to start figuring out who I am when I am not that person, and I cannot figure that out if I keep being that person every time something goes wrong. I am tired. I am so tired. I have been tired for 3 months and I need to rest, and I cannot rest if I keep. Her seatbelt is already unbuckled. She is standing up. She does not decide to stand up. Her body makes the decision before her mind finishes the argument, because you do not spend 16 years training yourself to respond to emergencies, 16 years of having it drilled into you that when something goes wrong you move toward it, not away from it, that hesitation costs lives, that the person who acts first is the person who saves people, and then simply stop. The training does not turn off because you filed paperwork. The instinct does not pause because you are on terminal leave. When the announcement says any pilot, please come forward, Captain Alexis Reyes, USAF, 3,200 hours, 77 combat missions, does not get to pretend she is just a tired woman in a leather jacket who wants to be left alone. She never got to be that person. She is not that person. She moves toward the front of the aircraft with the calm, purposeful stride of someone who is not panicking and is not performing calmness but is simply calm, the way people are calm when they have been in situations that were actually dangerous many times and have learned that panic takes more from you than it gives. The passengers near the aisle watch her pass. A few of them notice the way she moves, something different about it, something deliberate, but they do not know what they are seeing. They are seeing a military officer in civilian clothes moving to a post. Maria Santos is standing in the forward galley. Her hands are clasped in front of her and she is holding herself together through the sheer force of 19 years of professional habit. She has made the announcement. She does not know if anyone on this aircraft can actually help. She does not know what happens next. She is keeping her face calm because the passengers can see her and she will not add to their fear. The woman appears in front of her. I am a pilot, the woman says. Her voice is quiet. It is not loud, not demanding, not dramatic. But it carries an authority that is so natural, so completely without effort, that it stops Maria's thoughts immediately. U.S. Air Force. 16 years. Fighter jets. I can help. Maria looks at her. She sees faded jeans and a plain t-shirt and a worn leather jacket and a woman who looks like she might work in medicine or maybe engineering, who looks competent but not the way airline pilots look competent, who does not look like what Maria thinks a pilot looks like. The hesitation lasts less than 2 seconds. But Viper sees it. She has seen this exact hesitation before. In briefing rooms when she was the only woman present. At maintenance facilities where the crew assumed she was an observer, not the aircraft commander. At bases where the security personnel looked at her ID twice because they wanted to be sure. She has spent 16 years being underestimated by people who looked at her face before they looked at her record. She is very tired of it. But she does not have time for it right now, and neither does anyone else on this aircraft. She reaches into the inside pocket of her leather jacket and pulls out her wallet. She opens it and holds it up. Her military ID. Captain Alexis Reyes, United States Air Force. Her photograph. Her rank. Classification indicators that Maria does not understand but can see are official and serious. I have 3,200 flight hours, Viper says. Her voice has acquired an edge, not anger exactly, but precision, the precision of a person who is choosing words carefully because every second matters. 77 combat missions. I am qualified on aircraft that make this 757 look like a flying school bus. I am not commercially rated on this specific aircraft, but I understand avionics and aerodynamics and emergency procedures at a level that will help your first officer right now. So you have a choice. You can let me into that cockpit, or you can stand here and waste 30 seconds questioning whether a woman who looks like me can actually fly. I cannot make that choice for you. But choose fast. Because every second we are standing here is a second your first officer is alone up there. Maria Santos has been a Delta flight attendant for 19 years. She has developed, over those 19 years, a reliable ability to read people. To know who is telling the truth and who is performing. To know who is competent and who is pretending. She looks at this woman, at the steadiness of her eyes, at the complete absence of anxiety in her posture, at the way she holds herself with the particular contained alertness of someone who has been in danger before and survived it and is not afraid of it, and she makes her decision. She reaches for the cockpit door and unlocks it. The cockpit of a Boeing 757 is a world of organized complexity. Hundreds of dials, switches, screens, circuit breakers, and controls fill every surface. If you have never trained in one, it looks like chaos. If you have, it looks like language. Every instrument is a word. Every reading is a sentence. The whole panel is a story about exactly what the aircraft is doing right now and what it needs. Viper steps through the door. Her eyes do what they always do, they sweep the space in one fast, complete scan. It takes less than 3 seconds and she catalogs everything important. Captain Torres, slumped in his harness, head forward. Chest moving, he is breathing, but the rhythm is wrong. Unconscious. Unresponsive. A medical emergency beyond what she or anyone else on this aircraft can address. He needs doctors. The doctors are on the ground. The ground is where this aircraft needs to go. First Officer Park, both hands on the controls. Eyes moving correctly, instruments, outside, the scan pattern she was trained to maintain. She is flying the aircraft. She is doing the right things. But her shoulders are rigid with tension and her breathing is fast and shallow, and Viper can see, from 3 feet away, that she is very close to the edge of what she can hold together alone. Aircraft status, altitude 37,000 feet, steady. Left turn established, heading toward Charlotte. Both engines nominal. Autopilot engaged, though Park has her hands on the controls anyway, good instinct. Fuel sufficient. Weather clear. No secondary problems presenting. Assessment, this is survivable. This is manageable. This aircraft has one functioning pilot, one functional set of engines, clear weather, a good airport 150 miles ahead, and emergency services standing by. The math on this situation is not as bad as it feels. Jennifer Park hears the door open. She turns. She sees a woman in jeans and a t-shirt and her first reaction is entirely understandable. Who are you? Captain Alexis Reyes, Viper says, and she is already moving to the observer seat, the third seat in the cockpit, positioned behind and between the 2 pilot seats, used by check airmen and company observers on training or evaluation flights. United States Air Force. Call sign Viper. 3,200 hours fighter time, including combat deployments. I am here to assist you. What is your current status? The phrase call sign. The military rank. The specificity of 3,200 hours. The way she moves through the cockpit without hesitating, without looking confused by anything she sees, already reading the instruments with the eyes of someone who knows what they are looking at. Park processes all of it in a fraction of a second and understands, this is a real pilot. This is the real thing. Captain is unconscious, Park says. Her voice is controlled but Viper can hear what is underneath it. Possible aneurysm or stroke. I have declared emergency. Atlanta gave us vectors to Charlotte, about 150 miles. I have the aircraft but I have never, I have never actually done this alone and I. Her voice breaks slightly on the last word. Stop, Viper says. Not harshly. Firmly. Listen to me. You are doing everything right. Look at this aircraft, it is stable, it is on course, you made the right radio call, you are getting this plane where it needs to go. You are a professional pilot doing her job under terrible pressure and you are doing it correctly. I am going to sit in this seat, I am going to monitor your systems, I am going to run checklists with you and watch your instruments and talk you through anything you need. But you are still pilot in command. Every decision on this aircraft is yours. I am not taking over. I am backup. I am a second set of eyes and hands. Do you understand? Park takes a breath. A real breath, deeper than the shallow ones she has been taking. Yes, she says. Good. What is your name? Jennifer. Jen. Okay, Jen. I am Alexis. People call me Viper. Let us run the incapacitated captain checklist together. Do you know it? Yes. I have trained on it. I know you have trained on it. Training and doing are not the same thing. The first time I flew an actual combat mission I had trained for it in simulation hundreds of times. It still felt different. You know what saved me? What? The training taking over. That is what training is for. It is for the moment when the situation is real and your hands know what to do even if the rest of you is scared. Trust your training, Jen. It is there. Let it work. Park nods. She squares her shoulders. Something shifts in her posture, not confidence exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it. Checklist, Viper says. Let us go. What follows is 38 minutes of work. Viper has never flown a Boeing 757. She has never flown any commercial aircraft. Every hour of her 3,200 flight hours was spent in military jets, the T-37 Tweet in primary training, the T-38 Talon in advanced training, then the F-16 Fighting Falcon for the meat of her career. Aircraft that are smaller, faster, more physically demanding, and completely different in their systems and procedures from a commercial wide-body jet. But the principles do not change. Lift, drag, thrust, gravity, these are not different on a 757. Speed and altitude and heading and fuel are the same concepts. The instruments tell the same story in the same language even if the accent is unfamiliar. And Viper has spent 16 years developing the ability to read an aircraft, to feel what it is doing and what it needs, to think 3 steps ahead of the situation she is in. That ability does not disappear because the aircraft type is different. She reads the 757's instrument panel the way a linguist reads a language they have not studied directly but which shares roots with languages they know fluently. Some things are immediately recognizable. Some things require a moment. Within 5 minutes she has a complete picture of the aircraft's state and she is monitoring it continuously. Fuel, she asks. 54%. More than enough for Charlotte with reserve. Good. Both engines nominal. I can see that. Hydraulics are all green. Electrical is normal. You have got a clean aircraft with one problem, the captain is not flying it. Everything else is fine. Focus on that. What about the passengers? Maria is managing the cabin. The passengers are not your job right now. Charlotte is your job. Keeping this aircraft stable and getting it to Charlotte is your only job. Everything else is someone else's job. Yes. Yes. Good. Altimeter. What is your current rate of descent? They work through it together. Viper calls checklist items. Park completes them and confirms. Viper monitors the systems that Park needs to be watching but cannot always watch while she is also flying and talking to ATC. When Park is on the radio, Viper watches the instruments. When Park needs to complete a checklist item that requires 2 hands, Viper talks her through it. They divide the workload the way two pilots are supposed to divide it, and gradually, as the minutes pass, something that was not there before begins to be there. Rhythm. It is not the rhythm of a crew that has flown together for years. It is not the seamless, almost telepathic coordination of pilots who know each other's patterns and habits. But it is real. They are finding each other's timing, learning each other's pace, building something that works. Park begins to breathe more evenly. Her radio calls to Charlotte approach become steadier and more precise. She corrects for a slight altitude deviation before Viper mentions it. She catches a checklist item she had almost skipped and goes back and completes it correctly. Charlotte approach, Delta 1549, we are 40 miles south, descending through flight level 200, requesting vectors for ILS runway 36C, Park says. Delta 1549, Charlotte approach, radar contact. Turn right heading 030 for sequencing. Descend and maintain 8,000 feet. You are number 1 for the airport. Emergency equipment is standing by on the field. Right 030, descending to 8,000. Thank you. Delta 1549. Viper nods once. Clean call. Professional. Good. I am shaking, Park says. I know. Your hands are steady though. Your voice is steady. The shaking is inside, not outside. It is not affecting your performance. Do not let it. 25 miles from Charlotte, Viper begins the approach briefing. Runway 36C. ILS approach. The localizer will come in from the south. Glide slope is 3 degrees standard. You will capture the glide slope at around 3,000 feet and fly it down. Approach speed is 145 knots. I will call out your altitude and speed during the approach. I will call the flare point. You fly the aircraft and you make every control input. I do not touch the controls. Clear. Clear. You have done this approach before. Not this specific runway, maybe, but this approach. The ILS is the ILS. You know what the needles should look like. You know what the speed should be. You know when to flare. This is a normal approach with emergency equipment on the field. What if I flare too early or too late? Then you correct. That is what the controls are for. You are not landing on a postage stamp. You have 11,000 feet of runway. You have margin for error and you will not need it because you are going to do this correctly. She pauses. She looks at Park. Park is focused on the instruments and the windscreen and the approach, and she should be, and she is good at this, and Viper can see it. Jen. Park glances at her. You are a good pilot. I need you to know that. Not because I am trying to make you feel better. Because it is true and you should know it. You have handled this emergency correctly from the moment it started. You have done everything right. And you are going to land this aircraft correctly. I have watched you for 30 minutes and I know what I am looking at. You can do this. Park's jaw tightens. Her eyes get bright for a moment. She nods once, short and sharp, the nod of someone who does not have time to process what she just heard but who heard it and is holding it. Thank you, she says. Do not thank me. Land the plane. 10 miles from Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Altitude 3,000 feet and descending. The runway is visible in the distance, 2 parallel lines of white lights converging in the haze, leading to the threshold of runway 36C. In the cabin behind them, 197 passengers are sitting in various states of fear and prayer and enforced calm. The flight attendants are moving quietly through the aisles, checking that everyone is belted in, speaking in calm voices, answering questions with as much honesty as they can and as much reassurance as they can. Maria Santos is at the front of the cabin, standing where the passengers can see her, her posture composed, her expression neutral, holding the whole cabin together through the sheer force of 19 years of professional practice. In the cockpit, Viper begins calling the approach. Gear down. Park moves the gear handle. 3 green lights illuminate on the panel, one for each landing gear, confirming they are extended and locked. Gear down. 3 green. Flaps 25. Flaps 25. Speed 160. You are on glide slope. Localizer is centered. You are exactly where you should be. 5 miles. The approach profile is perfect. The glide slope needle is centered. The localizer needle is centered. Park is flying a textbook ILS approach to a runway that is clear and dry in perfect visibility with no wind to complicate the landing. Flaps 30. Flaps 30. Final configuration. Speed 150. Looking good. You are nailing this. 3 miles. The runway is large and close now, the lights bright and clear. Park's hands are steady on the controls. Her breathing is measured. She is inside the approach now, in the place where good pilots go when everything else falls away and there is only the aircraft and the numbers and the runway ahead. 2 miles. 1,000 feet. Speed 148. Slight right drift, corrected. Park makes a small left input. The localizer needle centers again. Corrected. Good. 1 mile. The runway threshold is less than a minute away. 1 mile. 500 feet. Speed 145. You are perfect. Hold this. Viper leans forward slightly in the observer seat. Her voice, which has been calm throughout, becomes even quieter now, even more focused. 50 feet. Hold this speed. Hold this glide. The runway is right there. 30 feet. 20. 10. Flare. Now. Park pulls back on the controls, gently, the right amount, the amount that lifts the nose and arrests the descent rate and sets the aircraft up to settle onto the runway rather than drive into it. The main landing gear touches the runway. Both main gear at the same moment. A smooth, solid thump that rolls through the aircraft. Nose gear. Thrust reversers. Braking. Park puts the nose down, deploys the thrust reversers, and applies the brakes. The aircraft decelerates along the centerline of runway 36C, the engine noise rising and then falling away as speed drops. The 757 slows from 145 knots to 100 to 70 to 30 to walking pace and then stops. Complete stillness. And then, from the cabin, sound. Applause. Starting with one person and spreading instantly to everyone, 197 people clapping because they are alive and they know they are alive and they need to do something with that knowledge and clapping is what they have. The sound fills the cabin and rolls forward into the cockpit and Viper sits in the observer seat and listens to it. Jennifer Park puts her hands in her lap and stares through the windscreen at the runway and the blue sky and the fire trucks and ambulances approaching from all sides. She looks at her hands. She looks at the instruments. She looks at Torres, still unconscious in his harness, help coming for him now, help almost here. Then she starts to cry. The kind of crying that comes after the adrenaline stops. The kind that cannot be held back because the body has been holding back so much else for so long and now it does not have to hold anything anymore. She cries the way people cry when they have been genuinely afraid and are genuinely safe now, and the gap between those two things is too large to cross without some kind of release. Viper unbuckles the observer harness. She stands. She puts her hand on Park's shoulder, firm, steady, real. "You did it," she says. "Perfect approach. Perfect landing. Every person on this aircraft is safe. You did that, Jen. That was you. I could not have done it without you," Park says. Her voice is thick. "Maybe," Viper says. "But you flew the aircraft. You made every call. You put this plane on the runway. That is yours." She squeezes Park's shoulder once. "That is what we do. Pilots take care of each other. The paramedics are on the aircraft in under 3 minutes. They work on Torres quickly and carefully, preparing him for transport, stabilizing him as best they can before moving him. He will be at the hospital in 12 minutes. He will survive. The treatment he receives in the next 2 hours is aggressive and exactly right, and the recovery will be long but more complete than the initial prognosis suggests. He will never fly again. But he will sit on his back porch with his grandchildren. He will go to the retirement party Delta throws for him the following spring. He will be alive. The passengers deplane slowly. They are quiet in the way that people are quiet after something frightening, not the quiet of people who have nothing to say but the quiet of people who have too much and do not know where to start. Some of them hug the flight attendants. Some of them cry in the jet bridge. Some of them call family members and say things they have been meaning to say for too long. In the cockpit, Jennifer Park is on the radio with Delta Operations, beginning the emergency report process, when she realizes Viper is picking up her backpack. Wait. The investigators will need to talk to you. I will give my statement before I leave. Then I have a connection to catch. Park looks at her. Call sign Viper. She says it slowly, the way you say something when you're testing whether it matches something in your memory. Are you the Viper? From the Syria operations? 2019-2020. A pause. Small. But there. A lot of what happened in those deployments is classified, Viper says. I was doing my job. Fighter pilots talk, Park says. I have a friend, a guy I went through training with, he cross-commissioned from Navy to Air Force. He told me about a pilot from the Syria campaign. He said this pilot held off a full enemy air threat alone for 40 minutes while a Marine unit was extracted from a surrounded position. He said she was outnumbered and her aircraft took a hit and she stayed on station anyway until the last person was out. He said when she finally RTB'd the maintenance crew counted the damage and said she should not have been able to keep the aircraft in the air. He said the call sign was Viper. Viper does not answer immediately. They say a lot of things, she says finally. Stories get bigger each time they get told. I was a good pilot. I did my job. Most of what you just described is either classified or exaggerated or both. I am done now. On terminal leave. Trying to figure out what comes after 16 years of being one specific person. Park looks at her for a long moment. What comes after, Park says quietly, is that you just helped save 199 lives as a civilian in the first hour of your retirement. I think whatever comes after is going to be fine. Viper almost smiles. It gets close but does not quite arrive. Take care of yourself, Jen. You are a good pilot. Do not forget that. You too, Viper. The FAA safety inspector who interviews Viper is a thorough and careful man named David Okafor who has spent 20 years investigating aviation incidents and accidents. He has interviewed hundreds of pilots over those 20 years. He has very good instincts for when someone is embellishing their role in a situation. He does not find that here. Captain Reyes, in your own words, can you describe your involvement in the emergency? First Officer Park had already declared the emergency and established contact with Charlotte Approach before I arrived at the cockpit. She was flying the aircraft correctly and following proper emergency procedures. I sat in the observer seat and provided systems monitoring, checklist assistance, and communication support. I did not touch the flight controls at any point during the flight. Every control input was made by First Officer Park. Every decision was hers. You have no Boeing 757 type rating. Correct. I have 3,200 hours in high-performance military aircraft including 77 combat missions. I am familiar with avionics systems, emergency procedures, and cockpit resource management at a professional level. I was able to read the 757's instruments and assist with checklists without a type rating for that specific aircraft. In your assessment, was your assistance critical to the outcome? Viper pauses before answering this one. First Officer Park is an excellent pilot. She was managing the emergency correctly before I arrived. My presence allowed her to divide the cognitive workload more effectively and may have reduced the psychological stress of the situation. Whether she would have achieved the same successful outcome without me, yes. I believe she would have. She had the skill and the training. She needed support, not rescue. Okafor writes for a long time. He looks up. Is there anything else you want to add to the record? No, Viper says. First Officer Park saved that aircraft. Make sure the record says that. He looks at her for a moment. Then he writes something. The report, when it is finalized, will contain the following. Subject demonstrates exceptional professional competence and situational awareness. Assistance provided was valuable and appropriate. Subject's conduct throughout the incident reflects the highest standards of aviation professionalism. Recommend commendation. It will also note, clearly, that First Officer Jennifer Park performed her duties with distinction and that the successful outcome of the emergency is credited primarily to her skill and composure. By the time Delta's Director of Operations arrives at Charlotte to conduct the airline's own debrief, the seat in the waiting area where Viper was sitting is empty. She has given her statement, provided her contact information, and walked back through the terminal to the departures board. She finds a Seattle flight leaving in 90 minutes. She buys a ticket with the cash she has in her wallet. She goes through security. She sits in a gate chair and closes her eyes. She is tired. Very tired. But it is a different quality of tired than it has been for the past 3 months. Not the heavy, pressing tiredness of something unresolved. Something closer to the tiredness of work that was worth doing. The story hits the news that evening. By midnight it is on every major network. By morning it has crossed the Atlantic and is being covered in Europe and Asia. The headline writes itself, Off-duty Air Force fighter pilot helps land Delta jet after captain collapses. Female combat veteran steps in at 37,000 feet. Call sign Viper, the pilot nobody knew was on board. The combination of elements is irresistible. A medical emergency at altitude. A decorated military veteran, female, in civilian clothes, identified by a tattoo on her forearm. A first officer who held it together. A perfect landing. And a woman who gave her statement and then vanished into the terminal without speaking to any press, without taking any credit, without doing any of the things that people do when they have just had a moment like this. Reporters try to find Captain Alexis Reyes. They find almost nothing. No social media presence. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, no LinkedIn profile. The Air Force Public Affairs Office confirms her service and releases one statement. Captain Alexis Reyes served 16 years in the United States Air Force with distinction. She is currently on terminal leave. We are proud of her service and proud of her actions aboard Delta Flight 1549. No further comment. No further comment. The address they eventually find, through public records, through sources, through the particular determination that journalists bring to stories that people want to read, is a house in Seattle. Her sister's house. One reporter finds a phone number. Viper answers on the third ring. Captain Reyes, I am a reporter with. I know who you are, she says. You have 30 seconds. Start. The reporter takes a breath. You are being called a hero by everyone who was on that flight. 199 people are alive because of what you did. What do you want people to know? A long silence. Long enough that the reporter thinks she has lost the call. I want people to know, Viper says, that women have been flying combat missions for years. Saving lives. Doing the hardest possible work, in the most dangerous possible conditions, in aircraft that push the edges of what human beings can survive. We have been doing this quietly, without recognition, without press coverage, without anyone outside of certain classified circles knowing our names or our records or what we actually did. We do not do it for recognition. We do it because it needs to be done. And the story is not me. The story is all of us. Every woman who has ever sat in a cockpit and done the job when it was hard and done it correctly and come home and not told anyone about it because there was nothing to tell, it was just the job. That is the story. Not me. The reporter asks if she will return to the Air Force. No. My service is done. But I will always be a pilot. That does not change. She ends the call. 2 days after the emergency, Jennifer Park sits in front of a camera and gives a press interview. She is in her Delta uniform. She looks tired but composed and completely clear about what she wants to say. Captain Reyes saved this flight, she says. Not only through her skills, though her skills are extraordinary. She saved it through something else. She walked into that cockpit and she looked at me and she did not take over. She did not push me aside. She did not treat me like someone who needed to be replaced. She said, "You are pilot in command, every decision is yours, I am backup." And then she stood behind me and told me, over and over, in every way she could, that I was capable of doing what needed to be done. She told me I was a good pilot. She told me I was trained for this. She told me she had seen young pilots do harder things. She made me believe it. And because I believed it, I could do it. That is not just skill. That is leadership. That is the best kind of leadership, the kind that makes other people more capable, not less. I will carry that with me for the rest of my flying career. Delta Airlines releases its official statement. The CEO records a video. The airline offers Captain Reyes free travel for life. They offer her a seat on an aviation safety advisory board. She declines the board position in a brief, polite phone call. She says she is not ready to be a symbol of anything yet. She says she needs some time to figure out what comes next. She accepts the flights. 2 weeks later. Seattle, Washington. Early morning. The light is the particular pale gold of Pacific Northwest autumn, the kind of light that feels softer than light elsewhere, filtered through clouds that are present even on clear days. Viper sits on the back porch of her sister's house. She is holding a cup of coffee in both hands. The garden behind the house has gone yellow and orange, the trees beginning to drop leaves that gather against the fence. The air smells like the ocean and like something burning somewhere distant and like coffee. The city is waking up slowly around her, distant traffic, a dog barking 2 streets over, the sound of a neighbor's radio through an open window, someone's door closing. Normal sounds. The sounds of a place where no one is in danger. Her sister Clara comes out with her own coffee and sits in the other chair. Clara is 2 years younger than Alexis. She is a 4th-grade teacher. She is the kind of person who walks into rooms and immediately makes them warmer without doing anything specific, just through some quality of presence that Alexis has never been able to define or replicate. "You are famous," Clara says. Alexis makes a sound that is almost a laugh. "It will blow over. 199 people do not forget the person who helped land their airplane. Park landed the airplane. Alexis." Clara's voice is gentle and patient, the voice she uses with her students when they are being stubborn about something they know is not true. "You are allowed to accept that you did something good." Alexis looks at her coffee. Outside, somewhere in the neighborhood, the dog is still barking. The leaves on the garden trees shift in a small wind. "Are you okay?" Clara asks. "With leaving?" "With all of it?" Alexis is quiet for a long time. She watches a leaf detach from the nearest tree and fall in a slow spiral to the grass below. "I do not know," she says finally. 16 years of being one specific person. Viper. Captain Reyes. The job. It was everything. Every decision I made, everything I thought about, everything I was good at, it was all built around that identity and that role and that purpose. And now the role is over. The papers are signed. I am officially a civilian as of 4 days ago. And I wake up in the morning and I am just Alexis, and I do not know who that is. I do not know what she is for. Clara is quiet for a moment. She saved 199 people on a Tuesday afternoon, she says. Without a fighter jet. Without weapons. Without a mission briefing or a tactical situation. She walked up to a cockpit door and she talked a terrified pilot through the hardest 38 minutes of her career, and she did it with nothing but her knowledge and her calm and her belief that the other person could do the job. Clara looks at her sister. That is also you. That was also always you. Alexis does not answer. She looks down at her left forearm where the jacket sleeve has ridden up slightly. The tattoo. The viper snake. The number 77. She traces it with her finger. The coils of the snake. The corners of the numbers. She knows every line of it. I am going flying tomorrow, she says. There is a flight school 20 minutes from here. They have a Cessna 172. Tiny. Single engine. Nothing. You could probably run faster than it flies. She almost smiles. I want to go up and just fly. No mission. No target. No threat. No reason except that I want to be in the air. I want to remember what it felt like when I was 19 years old and I flew my first solo, and I was so scared and so alive, and the only thing in the world was me and the aircraft and the sky, and it was the most extraordinary thing I had ever done, and I thought, this is what I am for. I want to feel that again. That sounds exactly right, Clara says. Maybe. Alexis takes a long sip of coffee. Looks at the garden, the golden light, the falling leaves. Maybe it is. They sit together for a while. Two sisters in the morning. The city coming awake around them. The light getting stronger. The coffee getting cold. Then, so quietly that Clara almost does not hear it, Alexis says. I am not done being a pilot. I am just done being a weapon. There is a difference. Clara reaches over and puts her hand on her sister's arm. On the tattoo. On the Viper and the 77. Yes, she says. There is. They sit there in the morning light until the coffee is gone and the sun is fully up and the day has properly begun, and neither of them says anything else for a long time because nothing else needs to be said. Somewhere in the FAA records for September 10, 2024, there is a notation that reads, Delta Flight 1549, emergency declared at 15:42 Eastern Time, captain incapacitated, diverted to Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Assisted by off-duty military aviator Captain Alexis Reyes, USAF. All 199 souls aboard survived the emergency. Safe landing achieved at 16:20 Eastern Time. No passenger or crew injuries. Aircraft undamaged. Somewhere in the United States Air Force personnel records, the terminal leave of Captain Alexis Reyes, call sign Viper, was finalized in September 2024. 16 years of service. Distinguished Flying Cross. Air Medal with 5 oak leaf clusters. Fighter Weapons School graduate. 77 combat missions. Honorable discharge. Somewhere, in Seattle, in Charlotte, in Atlanta, in 100 other cities, those 199 passengers scattered to after the emergency, people are telling the story. They tell it at dinner tables and in offices and to friends who were worried when they saw the news. They say, I was on that flight. They say, there was a woman. They say, she just stood up and walked to the front. They say, I never saw her face clearly. Most of them could not describe her if they tried. A woman, they say. Leather jacket. Dark hair. She looked ordinary. She looked like nobody in particular. That was always the point. Call sign, Viper. Not a weapon anymore. Not a legend. Not a symbol. Just a pilot. And after all of it, after 16 years and 77 missions and the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Classified Commendation and the Syria campaign and the malfunction that almost cost everything and the terminal leave paperwork and the flight to Seattle and the 47 minutes and the cockpit and the 38 minutes and the perfect landing and the empty chair where she had been sitting, after all of it, that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything.